Welcome back. You're watching India Tonight. I'm Nivedna Prabhu, and with me is my colleague Sumita Kareer. Now, let's put the spotlight on what's happening in Nepal because the crisis clearly deepens as both the Prime Minister and President have resigned, though the army has issued a statement asking protesters to exercise restraint. Chaos on streets continues to be reported in Nepal with incidents of arson, infrastructure breakdown, Sumita.
In fact, houses of several ministers have come under attack from the protesters, and former Prime Minister Jalanath Kanal's wife was burnt alive after the house was torched. And hundreds of protesters broke into Nepal's parliament building in Kathmandu, with smoke continuing to rise from a wing of the building. In fact, Kathmandu's Tribhuvan International Airport is now shut, and Air India has cancelled several flights to Kathmandu. In fact, Times Network Saket Kumar has filed a ground report. Let's listen in to what he's filed and what's the situation at the moment on the ground is.
अभी भी जगह जगह आगजनी और तोड़फोड़ हो रही है। अभी आप देखिए, मैं जिस जगह पे मौजूद हूं, यहां पर इससे थोड़ी दूर आगे जाने के बाद वहां पर भी जो घंटा घर है, ये बीरगंज है नेपाल का, और यहां पर अभी भी प्रोटेस्टर्स जो हैं वो प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे हैं। लगातार उनका विरोध प्रदर्शन चल रहा है। 6 बजे तक के लिए इस पूरे इलाके में कर्फ्यू घोषित किया गया था, लेकिन अभी 6 बजे ये कर्फ्यू में थोड़ी ढील दी गई है, जिसके बाद कुछ गाड़ियां आपको सड़कों पर दिखेगी, लेकिन अभी भी ये जो तमाम शॉप्स है, दुकान है, वो बंद है। जो प्रोटेस्ट है वो अभी भी चल रहा है। बड़ी संख्या में जो यूथ है और खास करके जो सरकारी दफ्तर्स है उसको टारगेट किया जा रहा है, चाहे वो पुलिस चौकी हो, पुलिस थाना हो या फिर नगर पालिका का कार्यालय हो। इन जगहों पर तोड़फोड़, आगजनी जो है वो की जा रही है। थोड़ी देर के लिए कर्फ्यू में ढील मिली है, उसके बाद सड़कों पर थोड़ी बहुत चहलकदमी जरूर दिख रही है, लेकिन जगह जगह अभी भी जो प्रोटेस्टर्स हैं वो विरोध कर रहे हैं। और इन लोगों की मांग है कि सिर्फ इस्तीफा देने से नहीं होगा, फांसी की मांग कर रहे हैं कि ओली को फांसी मिले। ये मांग यहाँ पर जो यूथ है वो कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि इस पूरे आंदोलन में कई लोगों की जान गई।
All right, so the situation remains grim in Nepal at the moment. This next few 24 to 48 hours are going to be crucial for our neighboring state. In fact, to decode what's happening in Nepal and the ramifications on neighboring countries, including India, we're now joined by Kuber Chalisa. He's a consulting editor. He's a journalist at Nepal Khabar. Thank you very much, Mr. Chalisa, for joining us here on ET Now. First, help us understand the kind of visuals that you're seeing on the streets, the kind of incidents unfolding in Nepal. What really led to this unrest, this mass uprising and absolute devastation that's been called upon by protesters, and have the demands of protesters now been met?
Thank you. The situation is a little bit aggression on the streets today compared to yesterday. Yesterday it started actually very quiet and disciplined march towards the parliament, but then it turned into a violent after police intervened. But today morning, it became more violent because the protesters, what they say, they claim they have started attacking the buildings, the public buildings, the corporate houses, and there is chaos on the street. And in a short while, Nepal Army Chief is going to have his view on Nepal television, national television, so we can have a little bit of idea what will happen after his address to the nation.
Right, as you point that out, let me ask you this. Given what we've seen, and of course, like Sumita was talking about the visuals and the unfortunate deaths also that has been reported, in a sense, do you think this was a tactical blunder as far as the social media ban is concerned?
Of course, because there was this frustration among the youth because of unemployment and various other reasons like corruption and institutionalization of all these bad governance and all these things. But the last straw on the this happened because of this social media ban, because that was one of the platform where the Gen Z, what they say, or the youths used to vent their ear, and it was a kind of their oxygen for them also, because a lot of youths have been using social media platform for their employment, for their study, and a lot of other things also. But when the government totally banned the social media, 26 of them, then the Gen Z got very angry, The frustration was already there, building up, and that was the last straw that sparked this fire.
Right, Mr. Chalisa, so you're essentially pointing out to the fact that the trigger for these protests and this devastation that's been caused in Nepal was the banning of social media. Of course, youngsters have been cinched by the betrayal of the political class, as well as as is being spoken about, on various platforms. But tell me also, because there is another viewpoint, that the way these protests have boomeranged, these cannot be completely organic. So are these people who are protesting truly Gen Zs? The kind of plundering, the kind of devastation of property, the breakdown of property and infrastructure that we've seen, is this only the involvement of Gen Zs over here?
No, you're very right, because what started with the disciplined Gen Z protest yesterday morning turned out violent, and after that violence, when the police started shooting, the Gen Z protesters most of them were returning, and the protest was hijacked by other forces, and we don't know who are they, and they are there on the street everywhere today. The people who were leading this Gen Z protest, they have been repeatedly asking them to return, not to arson the public property, not to damage public property and corporate houses, but they are still arsoning the public properties, media houses. They are targeting media houses, they are targeting corporate houses, they are targeting Singhadarbar, the seat of the Nepal government, and they are targeting the president's house, they are targeting the former president's house, they are targeting former prime minister's house. So it seems that the protest has been hijacked by the other forces, which we exactly don't know who are they, but there is some speculation that they are from the opposition parties, who could be anyone.
Mr. Chalisa, as you point that out, and given the kind of visuals that we're looking at and the arson, and more importantly, what we did see right after what has unfolded here, at least in the past 24 hours, is the Prime Minister's resignation. Also we did see that protesters stormed his office as well and set his residence on fire. But I want to understand from your point of view, given that resignation, how are you reading into it? More importantly, because now it doesn't just talk about the leadership, it also talks about the larger implications of this and the political turmoil that Nepal was already facing.
The issue is, again, back to the first question, like that, when the political parties fail to deliver to the people, and when there was this corruption cases were going on, the political parties, they didn't take it very seriously. And that made the political parties very irrelevant and redundant to the youths. Today's youths, the Gen Z, they want employment at home. They want to do new things. They want to work on their own conditions, on their own stance. But the system as such by these political parties has been so much old and old-fashioned, they couldn't cater to the needs and the aspirations of the youth, the Gen Z. So that's why they came on the streets. But again, this is again the failure of the government, which is now the caretaker government of KP Sharma Oli. They couldn't read what was written on the wall. They failed to read what the Gen Z was asking for. And that's why this turmoil, the Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli's misreading of this writing on the wall has led to this devastating situation today.
Right, Mr. Chalisa, let me come back to the point that we were discussing just a short while back about how these protests could have been started by Gen Z, who's against the political class of any kind, but there are other elements who have eventually become part of these protests. So who is behind these protests and who is trying to effect a political change in the country?
There are certainly some forces like the old monarchy forces, and there are the opposition parties like Maoist Center, led by former Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal Prachanda. And there is another new force that's called Rashtriya Swatantra Party, RSP, that is also very much angry with how the government is handling their president, Ravi Lamichhane's case. He has been behind the bar since almost 5-6 months, because of cooperative fraud case, which they claim that he was framed. He's not exactly the cooperative fraud, but the government was hard on him and he was behind the bar. But that all these dissidents who were not happy with the government, they thought this is the right time to act against the government, but it led to the chaos because there is no one leading this protest. Because had there been a political party, single political party leading to this moment, then there could have been some consolation, or they could address something, or there could be one leader who could stop it. But now it seems there's no one to stop it because there's no leader.
Right. And in fact, as you point that out, what I want to understand from you is that we've also seen protesters attack the home of former Prime Minister as well. Does that tell us this was never just anti-Oli, but an uprising against the entire political establishment, Mr. Jalisa?
Yeah, that's very interesting thing, because since long this Zenji has been asking for the investigation of many corruption cases which were leading to the former prime ministers like Pushpa Kamal Dal or Sher Bahadur Deuba or even Jalnath Khanal and Madhav Kumar Nepal, all these 3, 4, 5 former prime ministers. But the government never took it seriously and they never did investigate the corruption scandals involved, which were supposed to be involved or accused to be involved by these former prime ministers. And even the corruption scandal, which is blamed to be in the design of the incumbent, now caretaker government's Prime Minister K.P. Sharma Oli, it was not also investigated properly. So that anger was within this JNG and other parties also, other opposition parties also. So they took this moment to take the revenge on them. And this personal attack and this personal arson and attack on public property, former prime ministers' houses, it is a little bit a tricky thing, because it seems there's someone is masterminding all these things behind the scenes. And at the present time, exactly right now, we cannot say who, but it seems the old forces, traditional, conventional forces are also playing in this game.
Absolutely. While the right to protest is everybody's right, but the way in which this protest has been handled is really, really concerning, given the breakdown of infrastructure, protesting, and of course, people being killed as well. But Mr. Jalisa, let's now turn our attention to Kathmandu's young mayor Balendra Shah, as online campaigns are now promoting him as the Himalayan nation's next leader. He's also urged Gen Zs to exercise restraint and not protest. So who is he, and is he fit to lead the country? And secondly, is this movement that's going on for him to lead the country, is this organic?
Balendra Shah, the new mayor of Kathmandu, now he's pretty old now, is a new figure in this Nepal's political scenario, because he doesn't belong to the traditional political parties like Nepali Congress or CPN UML or CPN Maoist Center. He was independent candidate and he got a very good vote in the election of this Kathmandu's mayoral election. But after his rise in the politics, there is this new aspiration in Nepal that the independent candidates can also come into the politics, because before, only the political parties used to get all these chances. But after this becoming mayor of Kathmandu, he also had shown some interest in opening party and becoming prime minister. Being a young youth and being a very firebrand mayor of Kathmandu, it was good to see such a young person lead the metropolitan city, and maybe tomorrow Nepal also. But this situation since yesterday and mostly today's situation has a little bit created doubt, because the protest is also not in his hand. The protest, which was supposed to be started from his address, is not getting slowed down from his address to come back and to settle down. So there seems to be, like I said, playing many actors on the streets, which will make it a little bit difficult for Mr. Balendra Shah to become Prime Minister. He could become Prime Minister because as of today, he seems to be the most probable candidate for the next Prime Minister after this protest and everything. But still, seeing the scenario on the streets today, the players, different players, hijacking the protest, it seems a little bit tricky, and it will make his premiership tenure, if he becomes Prime Minister also, it will make him difficult to function also.
Right, Mr. Chalisa, even as we continue to see pictures of property being torched and, of course, arson and other such instances that are currently going on in Nepal, we do hope to see the kind of changes that will be effected as a result of these protests. And whether it's going to be Balendra Shah who's going to lead the country next, that will be interesting to see. But for the moment, thank you very much for taking the time out and sharing your perspectives on all that's transpiring in Nepal. Thank you very much once again for joining us.
Thank you.